So, good morning, and thank you for being here for our session on how to close the climate knowledge gap in the Mediterranean region. I am Natalie Klauter from UNIMED, the Mediterranean Universities Union, which is an association gathering 150 universities from the Mediterranean region, both from the northern and the southern shore, and also beyond the Mediterranean region. What we do as an association in support of the universities is to help them in the internationalization sector, in the higher education and research and mobilization and mobility of students and staff, in the capacity building and in the curricula development, as well in some trainings for the international relations offices. Within UNIMED, we have set up some sub-networks, which are thematic working groups on specific common priorities of our universities. We have, for example, a sub-network on international in migration, in journalism, in dialogue and mobility. And we have also a sub-network, of course, on climate and environmental change, which is coordinated by the University of Girona in Spain, and in particular by Professor Josep Vila Subirós, and by the Abdelmalek Essadi University in Morocco with Professor Adil Sali. And we are here today thanks also to these two universities to debate on what universities can do and to contribute to have a greener and a more sustainable Mediterranean region. So I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, Professor Khalid Temsamani from the Abdelmalek Essadi University, who is an international expert and an advisor in different international agencies. And I would like to ask him which are the climate gaps, knowledge gaps today, and how the Moroccan universities are filling these gaps.
Thank you so much, dear Natalie, for this introduction. And at the beginning, I would like to say that it is a real pleasure for me, representing my university, to have been co-organizing with UNIMED this side event, which topic is very crucial, actually, a very important topic, which is how to close the climate gap within our respective universities. And for that, before sharing with you a few initiatives and experiences my university has been leading, let me provide you with three entry points to this topic that are related to the COP in which we are right now. We have to know that the first entry point is Article 6 of the UNFCCC Convention, who speaks about education and how we can close knowledge gap via education, via involving various stakeholders from civil society, including the universities. That's number one, because understanding the impact of global warming, according to this article, goes via decreasing or increasing the literacy of youth and of the various actors within a community in terms of what are the adverse effects of climate change on their everyday life. So for Article 6, education and training are integral, enabling enabling citizens' contribution to local and global effort to meet the climate change challenge. Of course, it calls for, as I said, various stakeholders to close this gap, including universities. Now, the second entry point is more recent, which is the Article 12 of the Paris Agreement. So for this Article 12, it calls for to strengthen education and practice learning about climate change, again among the whole community, public awareness, higher education, enforcing scientific research, etc. That's the second entry point. And the last one is come from last year, from the Glasgow Climate Action Pact. So this pact talks about the critical role of youth as agent of change. It came in Article 55 of the Glasgow Climate Action Pact, Article 55. But then we have two other articles, Article 64 and 65, that urges the COP presidencies with the support of the UNFCCC Secretariat to organize an annual forum between youth and parties to discuss and to engage into a dialogue to look at how we can enhance education, enhance knowledge about climate change, because without this component you cannot work to mitigate the adverse effect of climate change. So that's another entry point, the third one. Now let me share with you a few experiences that my university led. The first was in July 2021, where a group of students actually from the School of Governance at UMC SPE, University Mohammed VI of Polytechnic in Ben Guerir. It is very close to Marrakesh. So the students from the School of Governance decided to organize a forum around the climate change issues by inviting university professors from various universities from Morocco. And they added to that some experts, 30 experts actually, I was one of them, with some other experts from Europe, but also from Africa. So the idea was to discuss and to do an assessment of what are the gaps within our respective university to see what is not working and what should be done to overcome these gaps. So many elements came out from that assessment, and some of them are obvious. We could expect them, like for example, a lack of climate change curricula, modules, master's degree within our respective universities. Some topics are included, but very weakly, like shame in certain big curricula, but without mentioning that this is climate change. For example, you can talk about water scarcity, but there is no link with climate change. So students, they don't see if this is really an issue coming from the fact of the changing climate. So that's one thing. The very scarce and weak information about local issues related to climate change that are included within not only the educational module, but also in scientific research in lines of research. So that's another issue. And there is insufficient data in the southern Mediterranean and in Africa related to climate change, which means that you don't have sufficient content that you can put in your educational modules. You have to go look for other things happening, for example, in Pakistan, in Nigeria, etc. But when we need some information, scientific data about our local context, it's lacking. So we need to enforce research in these fields, including scientific research, laboratory research. That's one of the things that we noticed. So insufficient number of research topics related to local regional context. And also university students are underrepresented at climate events. That's also another point. And apparently, since the Glasgow COP26, because it was there was a call about involving more youth, we have seen a lot of youth organizations in this COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, and this is a good start, I think. Contrarily, students' involvement in various climate-related clubs within campuses help them to understand more the issues. So the fact of having clubs related to issues related to climate change can help increase the knowledge of students within this universe. So some recommendations are to put in place transversal modules within all participating universities, engaging young people in conversation on climate change alongside decision makers, support scientific research, and it has been suggested to create a green campuses committees among participating universities, and the students at that university, their scope and their objective is to spread out this idea of green campuses along other African universities. That was the idea. But the other thing important is that at the end of this forum, we started discussion on to draft a green university charter. So we, the expert with the university, with the students, started drafting that, and then we had several online meetings with them, and hopefully last year in Glasgow, the draft charter was presented during the COP26, and now what we are waiting for, they are waiting for the students, is that the president of the universities that are participating in this process will sign the charter, the Green University Charter. So now, from this podium, what I would like to say is that having a call, according to this assessment we've made and the everyday life we have in our respective universities, to make a call that to create a Mediterranean University Climate Alliance that will advocate for, like I've discussed with you already, and I promise to make a call again for the second time during this call, to have a 1% global climate finance to be allocated to scientific research and higher education systems in the field of climate change within our participating universities. And when I say participating universities, is if we agree all together, UNIMED and other universities, to create this climate alliance for med universities, that will be a starting point to advocate now and for the next 2 years to attract more climate finance, because this is the weakest link. No climate finance for scientific research for higher education. This is the call I would like to make, and I hope it's going to be recorded. So now, let me go to the. Should I go to the second point, or maybe you will come back to me later?
Let's go to the second point.
I finish? Oh, okay. Second point is that my university has decided in 2021 view this movement around higher education and scientific research that is related to lack of information and climate science, etc., etc. University has decided to establish a strategy, 2021-2030, a strategy on RSU, la responsabilité sociétale des universités, but related to SDGs. We started with 7 SDGs. Now we have 10 SDGs that has been included in the strategy, and the initial idea was to submit an application at the Time Higher Education Ranking International. So to see how is ranked our university, we need this 7 or 10 SDGs, and unfortunately the first exercise was very bad, especially for SDG 13 that I am leading, because lack of data, lack of information, we cannot gather information among laboratories, among professors. I mean, it's a chaos in this field. So we need to organize ourselves. So we have just applied a week ago for the 2021 ranking, Time Higher Education ranking. We have tried to include more information, more data about what we have done in the field of climate change, and we hope our ranking will become better. So that's the thing. But the strategy is chaired by the president, and we have a piloting committee, 2 steering committees, one for social sciences and humanities, one for pure sciences, and within each steering committee we have leaders for each SDG. So I am leading the SDG 13, and the last thing about this point is the professors and the piloting committee is calling the university president to establish a green fund for the university. So we have decided, it has been validated, so we will work from now to next year with the stakeholders around the city of Tangier and Tétouan, especially the private sector, and it's now becoming strong compared to 10 years ago. And we hope we can have some funding to feed this fund. And this fund will go to implement actions and activities that are related to each SDG, because I forget to say, each SDG we prepared an action plan, a chapter, and we would like to implement the action plan. So for the SDG 13, one of the items in the action plan was to participate in this COP. So I am here on behalf of my university. The last point is a master's degree that we have that is starting now, first semester. It's a new master's degree on climate change and sustainable development in my university. It has been supported by UNDP and Forci Maroc, Le 4C Maroc, and the university, of course. It will cover all the aspects and the topics of climate change. We hope we have enrolled 30 students in this master's degree. We'll see by the end of this academic year how it goes and whether it was successful or not. That's the last point I want to discuss. Reiterate my call to establish a Mediterranean Universities Climate Alliance. That's important, that will go for the 1% global climate finance, and the details of that we can discuss it later online or whatever, but this is the idea I would like to make here. Before closing, this time I will really close. I invite you all to come to Tangier by 21-22 of June 2023. We are organizing the MedCop, the third MedCop Climate Tangier 2023, after the first successful COP in Marseille, ahead of COP21 in Paris. We had a second COP in Tangier 2016 ahead of COP22 in Marrakesh, and then we stopped for a few years because of COVID, because of many other things. Now we have decided to relaunch the process of MedCops. It has been launched yesterday here in this room. I'm calling again for you to participate, to be there, because it's going to be one occasion for our universities to come to showcase the lack they have encountered in terms of a knowledge gap, and the way they are overcoming this knowledge gap. And thank you so much. Back to you.
Thanks to you, Professor. So for sure we have to collect this call, this alliance. We will start talking with different stakeholders on that. I think the Mediterranean Pavilion is the best place to discuss about this. And I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Sami Ali Klil, who is Program Officer at the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection. And I would like to hear about your experience and also to the link between the university and a foundation, so the link among different stakeholders. Thank you. Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Happy to be there, and I would like to thank firstly all the organizers of the Mediterranean Pavilion for offering such a beautiful and an interesting platform. Would like to thank also Mr. Chamsimani, representing the University of Abdelmalek Saadi, one of our main holder of the foundation. I will start from another perspective. It would be the perspective of an NGO. So the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection is an NGO. So filling the gap, considering the climate change gap, could be aborted from different perspectives. We would like to highlight or to share with you an experience that the Mohammed VI Foundation took. As I said, my colleague said that I'm in charge of, I'm program officer of the Seas and Ocean program. As you know, seas and coastal line are the more affected by the impact of this climate change. And by sharing with you this presentation, we would like to highlight how the foundation tried to involve academic and university and building their capacity for the implementation of coastal resilience projects. So the idea behind is to go not through building capacity only, but also through experimentation. And as you know, experimentation is one of the best tools to implement this culture among all students, because they can visualize the impact of the phenomenon, and not only talking about it by a theoretical side, but in concrete side. So without I will start with the just highlighting some of the mission of our foundation. The foundation is shared, was created in 2081 by the King, His Majesty Mohammed VI, and leaded the presidency to Her Highness Princess Lala Hasna. So the main mission is to promote the protection of environment and the improvement of the living, promote the right to education, healthy environment, and to be aware and prepare future generations. So when we say future generation, we mean not only university, but also schools, young, all the citizens. So we have many programs that the foundation are involved, from coastal protection, safeguarding of area and forest, sustainable tourism, environmental education, and there is also another program, air quality, that is more focused on building capacity on issue related to climate change, and finally restoring historic garden. I will start from the perspective of our program Clean Beaches, which is a program that rely all stakeholders involved in the monitoring of the sea and the coastline, including institutional one, private sector, territorial collectivity, and NGO. So the modus operandi around this program include a lot of partners, starting with the National Committee, which is Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Health, Tourism, a civil society which supports the municipality, and we have more than 3 local associations and federations that are active on the ground, and 27 public and private economic partners who sponsor by technical and financial support under a partnership agreement with municipality and the foundation. We have also 63 coastal towns that are responsible of the protection and development of the management of the coast and the beach, and there is also a local committee responsible for regular monitoring. There's also the program which is called the Blue Flag. It's an award, an international award, present in 47 countries, that is rigorous international level, not only require excellent bathing water quality, but also look after safety, beach backshore development, and environmental awareness. And also we have the Lala Hasna Sustainable Coastline Award. It's an award that is reward the best practices, project, initiative that are initiated for the protection, preservation of the resilience of the coastline. So, including inside this trophy, we have many categories. We have Clean Beach Program, Sharing a Living Environment Award, Protection and Enhancement of Natural Heritage Award, Education and Youth, and Social Environmental Responsibility of Organization. So the idea behind having 5 categories is to allow all the profile of the society, including university, by presenting their research, or civil society presenting their action on the ground, or private sector showing their social and environmental responsibility, to be a part to this momentum of the protection from of the resilience of the coastline from all the climate change impact. So we noticed that there is here we feel in the main subject that there is a gap in all the subjects related to the ocean resilience, the impact of gas emissions or global warming through this coastline. So we organize each year what we call the coastline meeting. It's kind of capacity building that are designated and personalized in function of the profile of the target, from private sector, NGO, institutional, and also university. So this year we include also the University Abdul Malik Saidi, that represented by Mr. Chamsamani, where there was a collaboration in order to mobilize all the students that are involved about this issue to have more knowledge about which is the link between climate change and their impact on the coastline. So the coastline meeting was focused on discussion on the stake and challenges of the coastline, vulnerability and opportunity. There was an analyzed treat issue of marine coastal environment like the other problem, overfishing, pollution, global warming, erosion. There was also an identification and prioritization of qualified action in favor of a sustainable, resilient coastline. We tried also, it was a session that was animated by experts to do an alignment with the dynamic and of the foundation with these awards, and an assembly of action under a participatory and inclusive approach in order to help them make concrete projects. So this is just a figure using the different steps that we use, from introduction, explication, introduction, to make them about the framework of the meeting. There was collective discussion supervised by consultant, and also there was practical workshop using practical outline for the participants. And finally, we have the conclusion in the light of the different discussion with different academic of the results of their practical workshop, in order to have the framework where they can put their initiative or projects. So considering also all the impact of the climate change, the involvement of the foundation, not who started in the area, including only the beach between 1999 and 2040, was extended to the coastline and then to the sea. So the coastline was through the initiation of an operation called Seas Without Plastic, where I will highlight the implication of the university and academics. And the Seas and Ocean intervention in the foundation was the alignment of their activity and action with the momentum of the UN Ocean Decade. So Her Highness was designated in 2021 as a sponsor to the Alliance of Ocean Decade. It's one of a member that is that means that the foundation is starting a real collaboration with the IOC, International Oceanographic Commission, that is in charge of the implementation, in order that the foundation, that allow the foundation to play the role of dissemination of all the orientation and action of the UN Decade through his different community, including university. So the Seas Without Plastic operation, it's a huge operation with different targets that have between its challenges having at least 1 million youth mobilized during the summer period, initiating more than 10,000 action with youth, and having collecting more than 10 tons of plastic per beach during 3 months. In 2021, we had also a new challenges is to include all these collected waste in the recycling process. So there is just some numbers of the results of the different operation, like having collected 521 tons of plastic waste, yes, and 61,000 of action initiated, and the mobilization of 1.8 million youth. So this is also some other stakeholders that were involved, including private company, association, cooperative that are active in recycling, that were also put and rallied to our partner who are on the ground in order to collect and to include all the processes in the recycling processes. So this is just some figures that shows the evolution of the impact of this mobilization through the different years. And finally, to push more the involvement of youth, the foundation has organized a land action to fight against plastic pollution, with a collaboration with 2 diver professional association, 2 NGO that have about 70 professional diver that were mobilized. There was also an involvement of 60 students belonging to the African Great University and Youth Education Network, AGUIN, which is that University Abdelmak Saadi is one of part of it, that I will highlight later, and 209 eco schools, primary schools of young reporter of environment. These are 2 programs that are located that concern youth in primary school. So the idea behind involving students over there is that they can organize some activities. We give them tools, information that they can have a kind of ocean literacy and climate literacy that they could present to the different students. So finally, I would like to highlight more the AGUIN, the African Green University and Youth Education Network. It's a program that was initiated with UNEP in 2021. The network brings together about 30 universities from 9 African countries, including Morocco, Tunisia, Senegal, Ivory Coast, Comor Iceland, Kenya, Mauritania, Uganda, Democratic Republic and Congo. And it is based on the main pillar that are education, training and networking. So it aims to promote the appropriation and integration of environmental and sustainable development concern in teaching and research. So one of the other mission of the network that Mr. Chamsamani could highlight more is to ensure the animation of the network creates space of sharing and communication, promote synergy, rely the various members, raise awareness, etc. So finally, to resume, I think that the need for a collective action is based on 3 main axes. The first axis is to be better synchronized. What we mean by better synchronization is have concerned objective about any issue concerning ocean or climate change or other issue, have priority targets and key messages to spread through all the community. The second axis is a better coordination that join the idea of creating an alliance that's being proposed by Mr. Chamsamani, is having common indicator where we want to go, agreed an assessment to have all the KPIs of our action, and having an action plan and a timetable. And finally, for filling the gap of the different community, we have to equip them with kind of action that they could initiate and share scientific, theoretical, and technical resource with them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sami. We will move now to our last speaker, Professor Daniela Tilbury, who is connected online. So we move to the northern shore of the Mediterranean. Professor Tilbury is a commissioner for sustainable development and future generations of His Majesty the Government of Gibraltar, and she is also honorary fellow of the St. Catherine's College of the University of Cambridge. Professor Tilbury, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And let me start by thanking our partners, UniMed, Uni of Girona, the colleagues from the Mediterranean Pavilion, and my core speakers. I must acknowledge the very valuable insights that my co-speakers have shared so far. And I think we join our voices as we try and push for a higher education that's more relevant, that's more impactful for climate change. Because as our first speaker said, we cannot wait anymore. We have these wonderful agreements that support in the Paris Agreement, in ACE, which is of course the UNFCCC agreement for action for climate. We all have committed to a much more significant effort to promote education, and very specifically higher education. So if I may ask for the slides to be loaded. Thank you. So we're here to talk about closing the climate knowledge gap in the Mediterranean region. Next slide, please. And I would like to start very much by highlighting, of course, that the university and scientific community provide the best available science to address climate change issues across the region. We know that, and there is already some funding. Perhaps we need more funding, but there's already some funding devoted to the science of climate change. Those related also to significant issues such as water scarcity, food security, coastal erosion, desertification, all those issues that materialize as a result of climate change. But, and this is a big but, our efforts have focused to date on expertise, developing the expertise, and mostly scientific expertise or social science expertise, so that experts can come in and advise and guide our actions. And that is important. But I want to argue today that is equally important for us to address capacity building of the broader population, of all our stakeholders, so that you don't need to be an expert to be able to implement change in this agenda. So it's important for higher education, for universities and colleges, to not only focus on generating experts, but to build the capability of their communities to be able to bring about change. And universities have traditionally played a very significant role here. Next slide, please. And I want to start by explaining where we are perhaps going wrong at the moment and where I think the Mediterranean universities are starting to make a significant difference. The most obvious starting point is, of course, the Sustainable Development Goals. And we're all familiar with them. There's 17 very ambitious goals that are dealing with some of the integrative issues that our people and our planet are facing. But this is where perhaps the issues are not understood. When we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, we're not talking about adding more science or adding more problem solving to issues. We are talking about a substantial change in the way we look at the world and the way we respond to the world's challenges. So the intention of the Sustainable Development Goals is to change or disrupt the current trend of development. It is not an add-on, it is a catalyzer for change. Next slide, please. And this is where we make a mistake, particularly in universities, when we treat the SDGs as solely a scientific challenge, because the SDGs are also an educational one. We must not just increase awareness or increase the knowledge with the sciences in this agenda, but we must build the capability. So the SDGs are doorways to explore change and to building the capacity of stakeholders. And by stakeholders, I mean teachers, vets, doctors. I don't just mean the specialists that are understanding water or earth or air. We're talking about professionals that are much broader, have much broader responsibilities, but whose efforts and work still impact on the environment and particularly on climate change. So what I am sort of saying, if I may explain it in a different way, is that so far higher education, our universities have acted as mirrors, reflecting what is going on in our society and enabling our young professionals, our young people, to build the capacity to understand the world as it is and to try to problem solve the challenges and the issues that we face. Whilst what the SDGs are asking us to do is to have education as a lighthouse, universities to showcase what is possible, what can be rippled across our communities, to showcase, to light new pathways, to create different opportunities so that we can learn how to change and not just what to change. And I think this is really important. So the SDGs in universities help us question how we govern ourselves, how we organize ourselves, how we live, how we work, and all of this is very important. So it's not just the science, It's very much about everything else that underpins the science, because decisions are not just made on science. They're made because there's a number of considerations that our leaders, our community leaders, our political leaders, those in a position to make decisions need to look at the whole. And so we need to understand how the science connects with the whole. So it is our responsibility in higher education to develop the skills, the mindsets, the ability to, yes, understand the science, but to connect it to the rest of the decision-making process so that we can create an alternative way of living and working. Next slide, please. And here are some examples of work that has been done in the Mediterranean region in particular to progress the agenda in a different way. So not just via knowledge and science, but through being change agents at the university level. So for example, the EduStar project, which is funded by the European Commission, is bringing universities across the Mediterranean and also with the Northern Europe, working together to develop what's called micro-credentials for university staff, so that university staff can understand, yes, the science, but also the types of changes to their curriculum, the type of changes to their learning opportunities that are required so that students can actually be more capable of affecting change in their communities. And this EduStar project is really working towards a sustainable future. Equally, and more importantly, I think, the University Educators for Sustainable Development, which has brought, I think it's 15 universities across the Mediterranean region to work on what we call change academies. Now, this is a very interesting initiative in what individuals in universities are working with others in other subject areas across the universities to identify an action plan for change in the universities. But they are also connected to other universities by understanding what's worked and not worked. So the science of change is shared through this University for Sustainable Development network. The network has developed resources, lessons learned, and a lot of very interesting examples of how to affect change in universities. Of course, MEDIS, which is very well known in the Mediterranean region, brings together stakeholders, but very particularly the NGOs with university educators to look at pedagogical change when we look at water, air, but very specifically Mediterranean sea issues. And they are building capacity, particularly in countries where there is not a great deal of national support for higher education. And that, I think, is a very important contribution of MEDIS. Another example I want to share is a UNESCO resource that is a little dated in that it came out some years ago, but is still relevant in terms of showing very tangibly how colleagues at universities can change the curriculum, because changing the curriculum is also very important. And by curriculum, I don't mean the curriculum that is devoted to climate change, but as I said before, the curriculum for that is training teachers, that is training doctors, that is training medics, that is training nurses, that is training environmental managers. All of these, how do we change it so that climate change and addressing it through daily decisions is embedded? Next slide, please. I also want to refer to the European competencies for educators in universities that was developed a little while back by the UNECE, which talks about university educators learning to know about specific areas to do with climate change and sustainability, but also developing the capability of learning to do and learning to be themselves, to actually reflect in their own decisions and the way they behave, the sustainability principles that they are trying to embed in the curriculum. They also talk about the importance of learning to work together and the type of capabilities that university educators need to be able to work together to affect change, because change is very complicated and one person, one champion alone cannot affect that in a sustainable way. So having the capability to work with others to affect the change is also very important. I recommend visiting this document too, if you're very serious about embedding university change for sustainable development. Next slide. And across the COP this year, there have been multiple references to universities and colleges needing to transform for sustainable development. There have been a lot of examples, a lot of calls from day one for this to happen. But the evidence is showing, when you look at journal evidence, published research, that higher education is adapting and not transforming yet. So what we find is a situation where, this marketing guru, John Grant, summarizes when he said, "You cannot put a lettuce in the window of a butcher shop and declare that you're now turning vegetarian." And we're having this situation in universities where we are doing some cleanup work, where we are encouraging a litter or a sort of waste reduction initiative. But then the other aspects of the university are working on areas that are unsustainable, and we are not addressing that as a whole. So we have this adaptation issue, which generates a lot of contradictions. And the students themselves see, and the community stakeholders see, how through these adaptation processes, universities are doing a lot of contradictory work. So we must learn to question some of those contradictions as we make our journey more transformative. Next slide, please. So one of the key contradictions that we find is this one that says, "I agree that I expect you all to be independent, innovative, critical thinkers who will do exactly as I say. To solve the climate crisis, we need independent and innovative critical thinkers." We've been saying that for 3 decades now. We need people to think in a different way. We need our students to be innovative. But the way we teach is as important as how we teach. So our universities need to start transforming the relationship between the teacher and the learner in universities. So it's not just disseminating, it is also building capability in the way that it is teaching. Next slide, please. There are other contradictions. You see, we are finding students are going to the streets protesting of climate change because they're saying that our communities are not doing enough, which is great because they are now experiencing their voice. But the issue we have is that we're not encouraging them or giving them hope as students and young learners to envision a different type of future. So there's a lot of despair, there's a lot of climate anxiety, and we need to bring futures envisioning, imagining a better future, and not just problem solving our current situation in higher education. And this goes back to the mirror versus lighthouse argument I made earlier. If we limit ourselves to being mirrors and reflecting the problems, we're not lighting new ways forward. So envisioning is very important. I'm coming to an end, but the next couple of slides, please. So we need to be lighthouses of change, and there's very interesting developments. If for example, from the University of Cambridge, but more recently, the universities in the coastline of Spain have been experimenting with this agenda as well, which is looking at ways in which university canteens and restaurants can model the climate changes that are needed to address climate change. Through reducing red meat available and through bringing alternatives to the canteen of universities, we can show, we can light up new pathways, and we can demonstrate that we are genuinely committed to alternative ways of living. Next slide, please. So to summarize, we need to, yes, still develop scientific expertise and knowledge, but we not need to limit it to passing that knowledge or to developing understanding. We need to get to the root causes of the issues, and that requires building capability. We need to stop just looking at attitudes and values, and we need to build values understanding. Why do we prioritize certain Nike shoes over other aspects of consumer behavior? Why do we do that? How is television, how is marketing influencing the way we lead our lives? So yes, we need to understand the science, but we need to understand how our society is influencing who we are and how we behave. Universities are perfect, a perfect position to challenge some of these ways of living. We need to stop seeing people as the problem and seeing people as agents of change. And I think that's important. With the waste issue, we tend to point fingers. We tend to say, reduce your waste, recycle your waste. But actually, people can actually be enablers of change in the way that they change the consumer chain through circular economy. We need to move away from single actions such as cleanups and looking at ways in which we build capability of our staff and our students to bring about changes that are more longer term. We need to move away from personal change to look at institutional change as university educators. We need to stop integrating the SDGs into our existing curriculum and look at innovating our curriculum, different types of ways of learning and experiencing. And finally, we need to stop sending messages about the SDGs, and we need to create opportunities to negotiate and participate in our community. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope this sort of summarizes some of the key issues that we have been experiencing in higher education.
Thank you, Professor. It was really inspiring and showing the way forward the universities have to follow in the future. So we have less than 10 minutes. I would like to know if there are any comments from the audience. Yes?
Thank you. Thank you. So my name is Karine Rosenthal. I'm coming from the Directorate for Sustainable Development at the Paris 1 Panthéon Sorbonne University. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting us also to participate to these very, very interesting presentations. For us, it's really a pleasure to discuss the future of universities because it's really at our stake. The role of university is to train the future generations, but the sustainable development is a science in progress, and as you said, filling the climate knowledge gap is a priority. Our university, Paris 1 Panthéon Sorbonne, is the first university in France for human and social science. For decades, our researchers and teachers are at the forefront in terms of adapting a collaborative approach, and building strategic partnership to promote the knowledge sharing. It's worth mentioning that Cairo and Paris 1 universities have a long-standing relationship for more than 35 years with the jurist, with the IDAI Institute, and for more than 25 years with economists for the filière française d'économie et de sciences politiques. We just, my colleague and I, attended 2 high-quality workshops at the Cairo University, organized in collaboration with our Paris Sorbonne. And the first one on environment and sustainable development, and the second on women and crisis. Those collaborative workshops have always been fruitful in the sense that researchers from both sides of the Mediterranean seas have had then an opportunity to raise common problematics, but from different perspectives and with different data. The aim of partnership is also to jointly train the future generations of leaders, as global problems will call for global solution. Global perspective is essential for us. To go further, I would like to say that university also have a role to play in implementing best practices for themselves. Action must be taken to recycle the used or unused paper or computer, for instance. And we are currently organizing an internal workshop to bring together to the table all university stakeholders, so the students, teachers, researchers, and the administrative staff, which is very often forgotten, and to discuss the priorities for the university and decide a roadmap for action in sustainable development for our university. So bringing together best practices to become a more sustainable university is a suggestion for future session of your system. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are about to close. I don't know if you have just some ending
Can I
remarks.
intervene?
Hello?
It's Adil.
Oh, hello?
Natalie, it's me.
Someone online.
Yes, Adil Salfi.
Hello, Adil. Sorry.
How are
He's
you?
one of the organizers of the session.
Well, very rapidly, I want to thank all the panelists for their inspiring speeches, and I want to share with you some reflections and ideas about how universities, in my opinion, should intervene. Well, first of all, with regard to the idea of climate alliance with Mediterranean University, this is a very good idea, I think, and maybe it will be better to integrate researchers from universities into, well, instead of going for another initiative, I think it's worth to capitalize with the already existing initiatives such as the UNIMED Climate and Environmental Change, which is the alliance we are leading in collaboration with the University of Girona. And I have some questions for Professor Tilbury. Well, for the cooperation, how to improve a win-win cooperation between public and private sectors, and how to adapt the rigid and cumbersome legal and financial framework of universities, which make their integration and practical impact mostly modest. And you know, in a very recent article we have published in collaboration with the Anna Lindh Foundation, we found results which join the MEDEC report and the United Nations migration results to tell that there are serious climatic and environmental issues by 2050, which are likely to engender multi-scale socio-ecological imbalances and spread and intensify already existing problems in Africa, which will make the Mediterranean and mostly the southern shore very prone to receive forced arriving migrants. So we think that beyond the challenges of ensuring food and water security, the biggest challenge will be to diffuse the culture diffuse the conflict between cultures and beliefs by cultivating an integrative and holistic transpolitical and shared spirit. And I think that this is a very huge responsibility for universities that they should tackle.
Thank you, Professor. I will just ask Professor Tilbury for a 30-second answer.
The question's a very big one. 30 seconds is very difficult to challenge. I'm just going to say thank you for highlighting the question. It's a very important one. And I think we're making slow progress, but in the right direction to address the financial frameworks of the university and all the other elements that at the moment can be seen as barriers. I think we need to keep working as partners together across the Mediterranean to address those. We need your help, and I'm sure that we can slowly progress in that direction.
Thank you. So Thank you to our speakers, thank you to the audience, and I want to share again the call for an alliance that Professor Temsamani presented before during his presentation, and we will work on it. So you are all invited to contribute. Thank you again, and thank you to the Union for the Mediterranean.
Thank you.